Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming and joining us here today. We really appreciate you coming out, and then this meeting will also be recorded on Akaku and aired at a later date. In case you missed anything or you have any friends or neighbors, family members that want to take in some of the information as well. Want to welcome our panelists. Tonight's meeting will kind of be focused on emergency management, emergency response. We know we've gotten a lot of questions, especially with some of the recent fires, whether it be up at Crater Road, yesterday's events down in Wailuku as well. So we really want to thank these gentlemen who have been working pretty tirelessly over the last several weeks, not to mention the last year or so beyond that as well. But we do have from Maui Police Department, Lieutenant Gordon Sagun and Officer John Kalama. From Fire and Public Safety Chief Brad Ventura is here as well. From the Maui Emergency Management Agency, Amos Lonakailua Hewitt, Administrator. And the Director of the Department of Water Supply, Mr. John Stufflebean as well. So just to get started, we'll bring up Councilmember Yukile Sugimura, our host for the evening, and then we'll have a couple of presentations, and then we'll open it up to questions as well. And our format tonight, I think most of you have gotten the opportunity, but if something comes up, maybe we missed it in the presentation, something springs in your mind, feel free to fill out any one of our half slips in the back, and we can kind of collate our questions and then direct that to our panelists once we get to that portion of the meeting as well. So again, thank you all for coming.
Okay. Thank you, Jordan. Jordan Hele works with me, and I wanted to thank you for being here. And the reason why we gathered you here today is because we had this date reserved actually for a while after we did the Free Market Venture LLC meeting here, and that agreement was not pursued. And there were questions in the community about what happened. What are we going to do now for resource? And then we had the recent fire, the Crater Road fire, and my community, I swear, was nervous and had what I call PTSD. And even if you were not directly one of the homeowners that lost their home, I was getting calls from people in general, just nervous about what's going on. And so therefore, I thought, okay, let's get a community meeting together. People can come, but I'm going to also film it on Akaku so that anybody who couldn't can hear what the plans are in the future so that we could maybe answer some of the concerns that came out over those days when the Crater Road fire went on. I want to thank Amos and your Mima. I want to Chief and the Fire and Police Department, and we can learn about how the emergency management works together. And I think all of us felt that it was, organized. But let's hear about how organized it was, so that let's hope we don't have another fire or disaster, but at least we would understand what the steps are, because they now have it organized in a pattern. And then I asked Director Stufflebean, and he's always the best, I say, because whenever I ask him, will you do a community meeting? He goes, sure. And he sets a date, and he shows up, right? So thank you very much, and yours will be after the emergency management, so that you can talk about water resources and about the emergency generators, which came up again with the Crater Road fire. So thank you very much.
So yeah, we'll turn it over to the presentations, and we'll pick it up.
Aloha mai kākou. So we're going to do a presentation about evacuation management planning. It's called evacuation management planning because it is truly a management process, meaning that evacuation there's a lot of moving pieces. It's dynamic, and we want to share those pieces with you so you can feel comfortable on how the evacuation process will take place. We're going to talk about the evacuation planning now and what it'll look like in the future, because there are different technologies that we're investing in very, very soon, hopefully online within the next month, and then the planning piece and the application or the implementation of the system. So we want to share those things with you. So what I wanted to kind of educate the public about is that people expect an evacuation route from their home to a safe area for every single threat that they will face. Okay? Now, what I want to say is that that doesn't exist. Okay? So the reason why it doesn't exist, because the evacuation plan is driven by these three factors. It's driven by the incident type, a wildfire versus a tsunami versus a dam failure, right? The incident type will change where you go. Does that make sense? So the incident location, if the fire is to the south, we're not going to send you to the south, we're going to send you to the north. If the fire is to the north, we're not going to send you to the north, we're going to send you to the south. If it's a tsunami, we're not going to send you to the ocean, we're going to send you Mauka, right? So it's related to the incident type and the incident location and the expected impact. So if we expect the impact to obviously be big, then we're moving you out soon. If the impact is immediate, then obviously we're moving you out sooner. If the impact is less and or delayed, then the evacuation plan will marry that or align with those three things. Does that make sense? So evacuation planning, what drives the plan is these three elements. And I just kind of want everybody to understand it, because there is no evacuation route. There is no one perfect solution every single time. Does that make sense? Okay. So what I also want everybody to consider is, as we start to look at evacuation plans and evacuation routes for the entire county, and we start to look at road improvements, connections, extensions, so on and so forth, what I want everybody to understand is that the evacuation plan, the evacuation management that includes the routes and the plan, is an all hazards approach. So when we start talking about adding roads or connecting roads, we're trying to make sure that the road accommodates an evacuation to the mountains, or for a tsunami, or a evacuation to the north or south. Does that make sense? So it's an all hazards approach. It's not just fire. It's not just tsunami. It's not just hurricane. It's not just dam failure. It's an all hazards approach that we want to be able to look at to provide good routes for all of you. Okay? So what also I want to share is that there's a lot of county departments that are involved in the evacuation process and have a role in it. We're going to share some of the roles tonight. And what we're going to do, because the fire threat is of most significance and creates the greatest angst amongst the community, we're going to choose a fire. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the steps of 3 agencies, and there's more. We're going to talk about 4 agencies tonight, but there's multiple agencies that combine with us for a total coordinated effort regarding an emergency. But tonight we're going to talk about the fire, and we're going to start off with the progression of the first county department coming on scene and starting that process for us, which starts with the fire department. So I'd like to turn it over to Chief Ventura.
Aloha kako. So we've been doing this kind of exercise for communities over the last month, and it's answering a lot of questions. So if we don't answer your questions during the presentation, please ask afterwards. What we're trying to do is take you on a journey from basically when someone calls 911 and we get dispatched to a call, how that leads to evacuations. So since we're talking about fire, we're going to talk about when we get dispatched. So our standard operating guidelines determine how many resources and what type of resources get sent from central dispatch. When that call comes in, the commanders that receive the call will determine if there's multiple callers, if it's far from the station, what type of report is coming in, and they take all that into account to determine if the resources that were dispatched are enough or if they'll be asking for more. When we know of an area, like let's say Kula Fire Station is responding out to Ka'ikinui, and it's going to take us a while, and it's already reported as 3 acres, we could put Air 1 in the air already before we even get on scene. So those are the types of things that are happening upon initial dispatch. Then while we're en route, we'll look at what we call our pre-plans in our software system to see if there's an area that we've already looked at for access and water supply. Those are two things that we as a department are always concerned with whenever we're going to a fire. We'll look at these pre-plans and then we start discussing it with our crew in the vehicle. And if we have a second or third vehicle with us, we're communicating that as well. Where we're going to get water, how we're going to access this fire. We'll be looking on Google Maps as we kind of drive up to the incident. Remember, sometimes it's only 5 minutes away, but sometimes it's 25 minutes from a fire station. So while we're en route, we talk about those things. If we can see a plume of smoke, that'll kind of trigger us to upgrade our response. If we don't, we'll stay with what we have or hold our assignment. And then if we do see some smoke, but it's not very substantial, we can have Air One go on to standby, which means, get the helicopter ready, put the bucket on it, get the aircraft out of the hangar, get the pilot ready to go. And then when we get on scene, we can make our assessment. So that happens. Once we get on scene, we arrive. Our idea is to get all the way around the fire as quickly as we can with our eyes. Sometimes that's driving, sometimes that's walking. And what that does is it gives us an idea of how fast this fire is spreading, where it's going. We do that. We determine if we have enough resources on scene, how many more are coming, and if we need to order a second wave of resources. All of this happens like in literally a minute. And we look at things like fire behavior, rate of spread, topography, wind, all those things that are going to determine how the fire is behaving and if we have the right resources to work on the fire. Then we'll look at what's at risk. People, right? We're worried about people first. Property, watersheds, infrastructure, utilities, power plants, water department facilities, any of these things that are at risk, those are the things that we're focusing to protect first. And that is determined by where we put our resources. So once we do that, we come up with our initial action plan, and that is how we deploy our resources. A fire usually has a head, which means it's burning quickly in one direction, and then it's backing against the wind or in a different direction in a slower way. What we might do is deploy our resources onto the faster moving flank, and then the resources that are coming behind us from the second or third station will be moving into the slower moving flank of the fire. So that's our initial action plan. That's what we come up with. Now, the whole time we're thinking, what are the values at risk? How fast is this fire moving? Do we need to evacuate? And evacuation in itself is a very, very dynamic situation. We could have the fire doing the right things in 1 minute, and 2 minutes later, it's doing completely different. We have wind shifts, we have change in topography. It might be burning flat, or maybe burning down into a gulch, which is really slow, generally speaking. It reaches the bottom and turns around the other side, and it burns up way faster on the other side. So all those things determine if we're gonna have evacuations or not. And like I said, in 1 minute, we're having, things are slow and kind of calm, and in another minute, we're kind of running and chasing it. So we're trying to anticipate all these things when we call for evacuations. Thank you. Give you an idea, we go to about 250 to 300 of these fires a year in Maui County. And we historically only evacuate a handful or two of times. Now, we're being more proactive, people are more aware, people are actually ready in their homes, people are self-evacuating on their own, and we totally understand that. We sympathize with the way the community's feeling when it comes to wildfires, and so we are just encouraging everybody to be prepared. But once the police and the fire department and MEMA are actually making notifications, then we're really serious about getting people out so that they don't get hurt. Everything that happens before it, your preparation, your choosing to self-evacuate, is all proactive and smart in doing what you're doing. So when we determine if we're going to evacuate or not, these are the things I mentioned: the fire behavior, the risk to life and property, the risk to our firefighters. Are we able to put our firefighters in front of this fire or not? If the situation doesn't allow us to get in front of a fire, then we have to go to the next area where we can stop it. The fire could get larger, and then that'll maybe determine if we're going to do evacuations in that direction. Additionally, we're collaborating with MPD, we're collaborating with MEMA, we're pushing information through central dispatch and through cell phone service, if we have service, to both of those organizations. We're also trying to meet on scene with police so that we can have face-to-face communications, because then they can directly command their officers to do the work, and we can command our firefighters to do their work, and it's a lot faster if we're face-to-face. So all this collaboration is happening. There's two different ways that we play a role in evacuation. One is we tell Central Dispatch. So think about 2 o'clock in the morning, the fire just started, MEMA's not activated, the police department is 24 hours there with us. We might tell Central, we're going to evacuate this area. Central will notify the police officers in the area if they're not with us, and they'll go door to door and they'll take their actions. The other way is what you saw last week with the Crater Road fire. They were activated in the evening, they were activated for several days, and then they're able to we're able to provide them with information, and then they're able to kind of take it from there and do their notifications. So evacuations, like I said, very dynamic. And if we over-evacuate, which is what has happened in the past, think about Kaanapali, August 11th of last year. A big blast went out to that whole side of the island for a small 2-acre fire up on the coffee farm area, and all the hotels were evacuating. The roads just became gridlock. So over-evacuating can become a problem also. So, we try to do it with thought and in a sequence of events so that we're not creating gridlock on the road and we're getting the right people out in the right time. But like I said, very dynamic. Things can change very quickly. So I think the community is very involved in good situational awareness, paying attention to what's going on around them in their community, and people are getting prepared at home a lot sooner than we have in the past, which is all going to help us just be safer as a community. So from here, I'm going to turn it over to police, and they'll kind of talk about their procedures and any of us can do evacuations. I mentioned that we might initiate it, but in the Pi'ihana fire the other day, they were on it. They were proactive, we were fighting the fire, and they were taking care of that already. So any agency can initiate evacuations. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. So the role for the Maui Police Department when it comes to evacuation, again, like the Chief is saying, we listen to everybody, MEMA, the fire department. I was off yesterday, so I heard about the fire, but I was working during the Kula fires. So our guys on the ground saw the fire. It was getting close to some residents, so they had them evacuated before even I think fire called it. So for us, we go to door. Officers working in that area will go to the houses and start knocking on doors and trying to get people to evacuate. Our officers are told we can't force people to leave. We can't force you to leave out of your house. We recommend it as much as possible to get out, but we have come up against a lot of people that don't want to leave. Pi'ihana Housing was one of them. I was told that several houses that we went to, they didn't want to leave. And that's something that people will have to kind of be aware of, When the police officers come to the door and knock and telling you, hey, we think it's a good idea for you guys to leave for your safety, we mean it, okay? And we want people to leave, but we can't force people to leave from their houses, routes that we take, or we tell people to go always away from the fire as best as we can. If there's private roads or anything that we might have to use, we'll try as best as we can to make sure our officers drive those routes first, because we don't want to send you guys on a private road, a road that we haven't driven, and there's a obstacle or a failure in the road or something more hazardous that we don't know about. Now, extreme circumstances, will we have to just do what we have to do? Sure. But majority of the time, we're going to try and make sure those routes are already known to us, that we can safely have the public drive on those roadways. Evacuation direction, again, we're talking about fire. We're going to go away from the fire, and we'll try and get everybody out as best as we can. Gates, I guess that had come up because of the Lahaina fires. For us, as the police officers, we're gonna break gates if we have to. We're going to cut locks. We're going to push down fences. If that's the area that we need to go to save people, we're going to do it, and we'll figure out the property damage later on. And again, coordination with fire and with MEMA, we're always together, and that's the one thing that's really good about working together so closely in the EOC. We're together, as well as the incident command. When fire has their incident command, we have officers either nearby or close by that they can talk to the battalion chief there. So. That's what the police department does for the fires. Thank you.
Check. So it comes back to the agency, MEMA. And so MEMA's role, and just as specific to the evacuation, well, a lot of things that we do, but we take the responsibility of the communications or the alerts and warnings, and we use all of these different tools to notify you. And so the first one is with MEMA alerts. We've been making some really great progress on MEMA alerts, but the number of MEMA alerts or subscribers to MEMA alerts is only 20,000. Okay, so I just want you guys to understand the reach with MEMA alerts and the limitation with MEMA alerts. If you guys don't subscribe for MEMA alerts, then we're only notifying 20,000 of you of the incident, right? So please sign up for MEMA alerts. We just had an expo the other day. We went from 19,000 to close to 21,000. So we're moving, but please sign up for MEMA alerts so you guys can be notified. We use the emergency alert system. That's when you'll see the message come across the TV or over the radio. We'll use that when it's necessary. The WIA, or the wireless emergency alerts, that will be the tone that you get from your cell phone. And you'll hear the tone first, and then it'll give you a message, as well as broadcast radio will send messages to that. Like I said, when you do an EAS, the message will come over the radio as well. And then the public siren system. We'll use the public siren system when it is necessary to use the public siren system. And so these are all the tools that we use for emergency alerts and notifications. And so that would be the role that we are playing. We'll talk about the Crater Road fire a little bit later, and how these tools were planned to be used for that particular fire. The next department would be county communications. So I'm going to speak for county communications, and of course they know about this more than I do, but I'll do my best to explain what they do. So what happens in an activation is the county communications teams, they're called to the EOC, and they're working with our alerts and warnings person to ensure that the messaging to all of you are timely and is accurate. And so we set a cadence based on the fire impact, right? What we predict the community wants to hear based on the impact or the spread of fire. Obviously, earlier in the fight, we'll be probably giving information a little bit more frequently. Obviously, if the fire is running, we'll be a little bit more frequent. As the fire starts to stabilize, then what happens is there's no progress. We're at a mop-up stage, and then there's no change in the containment because all the fire is being addressed within the containment zone, and it kind of stabilizes. So your message would be less or farther apart, right? What I want to say is that, so what happens is the press release goes out to all media sources. So what I want to say, the message there is the reach from county communications is farther than MEMA alerts. So we want to plug in MEMA alerts, we want to plug in county communications and to use all of their resources to get out to you, okay? So it's a press release that goes to all media, the public service announcements, social media sites, the county social media site, which has, forget the number, but there's like 60,000 subscribers to the social media site, I believe is what the number was. You can look and get this information on the County of Maui website. So if you look at the County of Maui official website and you go down to the press release, you'll find all of this information about the Crater Road fire as those messages come out. And those are in coordination with us. I believe the last MEMA alert was on July 13th. I believe we checked the press release on the Crater Road fire, and I believe that the press release could have been the 19th. There might be one coming out soon as well. But you can look at the county website and look at the press releases, and you'll find all the information that the county communications is pushing out to all of you for your information. That's a really good place to find information. Website, newsflash to subscribers, if it's related to the Kula community or the Lahaina community, then it'll go on Maui Recovers as well. You'll find information, and you can sign up for Maui Recovers messaging, and that will go there too. And then County Comms kind of manages the rumor mill as well and tries to provide good information to the public to clear up, any kind of rumor that may be distracting or misleading. So county communications plays a critical role in the public messaging, and I think I just want to thank County Comms because they played just an awesome role. They helped us to focus on the right messaging, establish a cadence, make sure that those messagings are accurate and timely while we could focus on operations. So, well, let me back up a little bit. So, I was working for the fire department. I worked for the fire department and retired, and I just want to say that my experience in my career, the current evacuation process has worked really well for me. Okay, and so I just want to kind of say that as we start to look at technology improvements, and which we should move towards for all kinds of reasons, and I'll explain some of those reasons to you. I just wanted to let you know that the way the fire department and the police department have worked, they've worked really well together. And so I just want to reassure you that the current system, before this goes into place, is a pretty good one. And it's never failed me as the battalion chief for the Maui Fire Department. I just kind of want to say that out loud as we move to looking at technology. So we are looking at new technology. And the new technology allows us to model communities. What does that mean? It allows us to look at the communities, any community within the county, and use all the data sets that are available to us and model the evacuation, which includes the time, it includes human behavior and how that affects the evacuation times out of the area. And so this communication modeling piece, this community evacuation modeling piece, which is one of the technologies that we're going through and purchasing, will allow us to really create any scenario that we want to create related to any community that we want to create it in, whether it's down power lines, whether it's down trees, whether it's a marathon, whether it's a big event that we want to try and evacuate out. We can use our community modeling software to help us to prepare for good evacuations, okay? Once again, multiple scenarios, infrastructural improvements. So we can look at the current infrastructure and, our subdivisions, our areas are old. Some of them don't have two means of egress. Some of the roads are narrow, and so forth. So we can look at the modeling and be able to find good solutions and responsible solutions that we have to fund and prioritize. So this infrastructure improvements, the modeling allows us to do that. Okay. Another part of the technology is zoned evacuation. So after when I took over the job, I talked to all of the, not all, but a lot of the emergency management agency administrators in California. Right? They're familiar with evacuations, large wildfires that affect multiple communities going in and out of a big area. So one of the recommendations, or the most important recommendation that all of the agency administrators had shared with me, is the one decision that they made that changed the way emergency management worked for them is zoned evacuation. Okay, so we're gonna pursue this zoned evacuation piece as well. Like Chief Ventura had said earlier, if everybody evacuates at the same time, then it's gonna be gridlock and we're gonna get stuck on the road, right? So we wanna stay ahead of it, we wanna notify you early, and we wanna get people moving out of the area as soon as we can, and we wanna do that in an efficient manner. This zoned evacuation helps us. So what happens in the technology is I can go and I can click, It'll be a web page that I can go up on. I can click on zone 1, 2, and 3 that puts them in imminent danger and or red kind of notification that you guys need to move out now. There's a danger coming from this particular direction. I need you guys to evacuate. I can put 4, 5, and 6 on standby and 7, 8, and 9 on advisor or notice. I can do that really quickly. The thing about that too is you can look at it as well. You can go on the web page and you can go, hey, where's the evacuation at? You can be in Paia and you can look at the evacuation happening in Lahaina and you can say and tell exactly where it's at. Okay, so that's the evacuation software that we're using that has zoned areas with push notifications. So some of the challenging pieces is to try and craft this message and then send it out to our alert system. Okay, that you think that that's pretty fast, but that can be delayed, especially when there's multiple areas where one area is evacuating now and the adjacent areas are on standby and everybody else is safe. You're trying to craft all of those messages under pressure. So this particular technology sends out push messages that puts everybody in a real quick way on notice. Okay. Like I said, this is how it'll look. You'll have the message on your phone. You would also have the map on your phone. You could see the picture on your map, or like I said, you could go to the public-facing page where you could see the evacuation and all the notifications that have gone out. So that is the end of our evacuation presentation. And then I guess we're going to go talk about the fire right now. I guess I'm starting. Hold on. I'm sorry, what's the question? Yes, so good point. She said if there's a geostorm, that would shut down part of the notifications. So what I want to share with everybody is not any one of those systems on the board that I showed you works by itself. There's going to be cell phone towers that are down, power is out. Some people don't have television, some people don't have radio, some people don't have cell phones, right? And so all of those systems work together to help you be notified. And so I agree regarding the community, there is absolutely an effort to organize the community, absolutely. And hopefully I look to get that started real soon, but there is an absolute plan to mobilize, organize, and prepare the community. And we've been talking about this a lot, and I just need to get some positions in place to help me mobilize the effort to organize the community, but that is in fact the best way to overcome the challenges we face for natural disasters, for sure. And we don't expect to do this by ourselves. There's no way that we will. And look to organize all of you to help us in the response and the recovery like you guys did in Kula and in Lahaina. So definitely not trying to do anything by ourselves. It would be impossible to do. So thank you for the questions.
Hi, sorry. If you don't mind, we're going to ask Director Stufflebean to give his presentation, and we'll take all the questions at the same time. If that's okay with you folks? And then we'll get, and then that way we can kind of flow through the questions. And in the meantime, too, if you haven't already written down your question, we do have more forms in the back we can pass out and get those in the meantime. But we'll get Director Stufflebean's presentation, and then we'll get into the questions. So appreciate you.
So we're going to just kind of go through our roles in the Crater Road fire, and kind of share with you our perspectives, and then maybe that might answer some of your questions, and then open up for Q&A afterwards. And so I guess it'll begin with me, and I just want to, this is a kind of a higher level piece. There's a lot of details that you guys can ask questions about later, but I just wanted to share with you what I was called out on July 10th, which is my birthday, to activate at 8 o'clock that evening, and the process for our agency began. And we were there for 4 straight days to operate the EOC. What I want to share with you is I want to share with you the EOC objectives. The first EOC objective is to ensure public safety. And that public safety began with the 150 to 200 cars that were cut off by the fire. And so working with national parks, the fire department, police department, to move those people out of harm's way, firstly. And then what we were strategizing is, what do we do if they run out of fuel and their vehicles, how do they keep out of the code? So we're thinking about fueling plans. We're thinking about the opportunity to fly in supplies if necessary. We're looking at the different facilities that national parks might have had that could have brought people to one location. We talked about, not being able to get food in and being able to organize with national parks to share food. There were MREs that was on site that we were trying to, that we had accessibility to, and that those plans were in place. There was water and some food that was available. So those conversations are happening regarding the public safety of the 150 to 200 people that was up in the crater above cutoff. That public safety piece turned into, as we started to contain the fire and protect the road, then we could move out those vehicles in a coordinated way to get them out. And that's what we did, what we thought was safe and something that we could control. And that's what happened, and we got them out 10 at a time based on the recommendation of the incident commander on the ground and the unified command, which was parks, fire, and police. The issue of evacuation came into play at some point in time. I forget, the days all blurred, to be honest with you. But there are wind shifts that was affecting the spread of fire. Even though we had great containment lines, the eucalyptus trees were throwing embers outside the containment line. Just for everybody's knowledge, it's the mile marker 6.5. Right below mile marker 6.5, the wind speeds were at 0 to 5. Above mile marker 6.5, it was gusting at 45, like literally at the point. So when we were flying drones, when the fire department was flying drones to support the operation, the drones could not fly the full operation because of the wind speeds, and that's how unpredictable that fire was. And so we started planning for the evacuation of Upper Kula and Lower Kula. And I'll let the questions come out after that, but that was the objective number one, is to ensure the public safety, was to be able to plan out the evacuation and the sheltering piece, working well with the police department. The police department helped us to set our triggers. What that means is they went door to door. They were door to door to kind of notify all of you that, hey, this is it could be coming. You guys can leave if you want to. But they were also tracking the time and the routes. So if they were called to duty to evacuate, they would know the routes and how to plan that evacuation out a lot more efficiently. So they drove all the routes to help facilitate that evacuation if it was called for. The second EOC objective was to coordinate resources and response. So we called the necessary partners into the EOC. We established unified command, and we worked well. Our job as the agency was to make sure that the right resources were called, the right resources were at the EOC, and or the right resources were a phone call away in case everything blew up. As things started to change and become unpredictable, they got stable, then unpredictable, and stable and unpredictable. The resources were called early in the morning, and they were positioned close in case anything was to blow up on us. And so that coordination of the response went really well in my mind. Communicating and disseminating information. Number 3, that was the third EOC objective, and it was important for us to make sure that you guys had the information that you guys needed. I know that you guys were anxious about it all, and we wanted to be able to provide that information to all of you. And once again, County Communications was called to the EOC, and they supported the cadence and the messaging for all of you. And in my book, I thought they were really, really good, and I was happy with how that went. The last thing is to support the recovery and restoration. We did talk to our partners in case the fire did get a hold of the gulch and did run down into the upper Kula neighborhoods, and what the restoration and recovery efforts would look like. We did have those partners online. We did discuss different plans if things were to not go in our favor. We did set up the shelter just in case, and those things were moved forward. So my opinion on the thing is that I thought that it was a unified effort by all the county, and not only the county, but the state, as well as all of the private partners. I mean, there was a tremendous effort from all of our construction companies, state entities, all the way up to the National Guard in resources that was readily available to us to use, and we did. And so it was definitely a unified piece all the way up to the Lieutenant Governor and how those resources became available to us. The coordinated response partners, once again, we had maintained a unified command that just allowed our situational awareness to be really where it needed to be. And so we, took advantage of that, and that worked in our favor. We were sharing information, that was another plus. We're sharing real-time information, whether it was a jurisdictional boundary or an agency capability or an agency limitation. That information was in the EOC, it was in the unified command, and we used it to make decisions. And that went well. Once again, the positive was the coordinated messaging that I thought went really well with county communications. I definitely want to say thank you to General Hara and the National Guard, because they did provide us with 2 military helicopters that were allowed to drop water onto the eucalyptus trees that were causing the branding, and that the local helicopters were able to work around the edges while the military helicopters were able to drop on the eucalyptus trees. We also had National Guard called and on the ground in case of an evacuation. They were going to support police in the evacuation piece and the traffic control piece if necessary. And then once again, to all of the private partners that did show up and help. That was my 2 cents on the scenario, the Crater Road fire.
So I'll just kind of give you a few perspectives of what we faced that night, especially with the people trapped above the fire. Our objective with the fire, we always try to put it in a box. Where do we want to keep it from moving north, south, east, and west? And our main objective on fire movement that night was not to allow the fire to go below mile marker 7. The fire only has about a quarter mile of road access. The rest of it is all kind of in the wilderness. Have you seen it on the hill up there? So that night we had so many resources coming to the fire that the road was basically blocked by all the resources. If the fire had jumped to the north and come down the hill, we were worried that it was going to be headed towards Kula Lodge. And then if it went downhill towards the Hapapa Gulch side, then it would have affected potentially the Hapapa neighborhood. The good thing, as Amos was saying, was the winds down the hill around Marco 6 were almost 0 miles an hour. So if it did get blown over the hill, we were pretty confident that we were going to be able to get in front of it. What we weren't confident about, and this is how we set up our evacuation triggers, was if it got into the gulch in Hapapa, then that downhill wind that we all see every night in Kula would have been pushing it downhill faster than we could have been getting resources in front of it, and that would have triggered evacuations. So that was kind of our main concern by Friday evening. The fire made several days of runs on us, starting from the 6th, then they kind of quieted it down. Then on the 10th, it made another run. On the 11th, it got into the eucalyptus. By the 13th, that was Friday, it ran again, and that's why we had to report, changes in the size of the fire. Since that Friday night, the 13th, the perimeter has held, but the fire is still very hot. We're dealing with a lot of things up there that are uncommon to other areas around the island. First, very, very hydrophobic soil that doesn't absorb the water is one thing. The lava tubes that are some are very shallow, but they hold heat. They have organic debris and matter in them that continue to burn for days and days and days on end. And all those sorts of things create challenges because we can't see what's underground. There's areas that we've gone very, very slowly through with water, and we've gotten everything knocked out. We have thermal imaging cameras. We're looking at the soil. It's all cool that day. We go back the next morning, and it's all hot again. So there's stuff underground that's coming up, and it's kind of creating this long duration fire. Otherwise, had this fire happen, like we had one in Palehu the other day, which was 100 some odd acres. We had it wrapped up in a day, a dozer line around it. We only returned to it once after that. Different situation, different access, different soil, all sorts of differences between fires. And then National Park Services and DOFA have been instrumental. Both provided us with hand crews from local here on Maui as well as Volcanoes National Park. So they've been out there helping us. They're kind of pulling back a little bit now, which is totally understandable. They gave us almost 2 weeks of work. And that kind of summarizes what our focus was on the first nights of the fire, to try to keep things Mauka, try to let it not impact the community. It was about 1.7 miles from the homes that first night. And so that's why no evacuations were ordered on Wednesday, because we thought we're in a good standing and a good situation there. Friday, when it grew another couple hundred acres, that changed as it worked its way towards Hapapa. So that's when we got our partners to be more mobile and activated to notify the community. I'll stop there and offer police an opportunity. They helped us.
So for the Kula fires, I was working during that time. And Wednesday, when it first popped up, my shift was getting off of work and the new shift was coming on. So with MEMA, we were already coordinating stuff just in case, but it was actually pretty good. Not till Friday did it ramp up that we might have needed to evacuate people. So during the day shift, I had all my guys ready to go, especially up in Kula area. We only have 3 officers that service upcountry, Pukalani, Makawao, Kula. Then downside, Paia, Haiku, we have 3 officers as well. So at any given time, you only have about 6 officers for country areas. Then the rest of the officers are in town. But at any time, do I need to send more resources, we do that. At one point, we even had our ISB, which is our Investigative Services Bureau, all the plainclothes guys. They were ready to go on, I believe it was Friday night and Saturday, if we needed to have them to come out. And that's 30 more bodies that we could use to help with the evacuations. And with the Kula fire, we needed to shut down the road. So with the help of national parks, we were able to shut down the road, and we had to shut down the road because of the helicopters flying overhead. Yeah, I found out from the fire department, you can't have traffic while the helicopters are flying over, yeah. And when I went up there to go see for myself, then it made total sense. So we needed to keep that road shut. and the park was closed anyway. So we still have the roadblocks right now, and that's what we did for the Kula fires. Basically, was coordinate with MEMA. I was in the EOC with Amos a couple of nights. And, we were going back and forth, and the coordination between the departments. Fire was there, obviously, with some of the BCs that I work with a lot. So, all that with this Kula fire, everybody was doing their part, and we were ready to go on this one. So, yeah, we had some good stuff. Anything to add?
Okay, you ready to talk water? Okay, so this is changing gears a little bit to talk about water. So I think the first thing to say is that water systems were not really ever designed to handle wildfires, and that's a hard message to hear. Water systems were designed to deal with a structural fire or two, and that was that's always been the situation anywhere around the country. So, and of course, as you know, the upcountry water system is really kind of even deficient in terms of being a typical water system. So then what can we do? Well, the two things that we can do, one is to position the generators that we have, get additional generators, the best possible locations to be able to provide water, provide energy to pump the system, because we have a lot of pumping upcountry. And the second thing we can do is to try to get additional source. So I'm going to talk about those two things. So first of all, in terms of generators. So, of course, we operate the water system throughout the county. There's actually 12 different water systems. The upcountry is one of the 12. And throughout the county, we have 6 treatment plants. So basically, our water sources are wells, which don't require treatment except chlorination, and surface water, which is mostly through the plantation era ditches. Any of the surface water has to be treated. So that's why we have the treatment plants that are basically very sophisticated filtering plants that filter the water. So we have 3 treatment plants upcountry, 1 in Iao and 2 on the west side. And all of those treatment plants have generators. So in any of those, if we ever have a problem with power, those plants are all able to continue because they have generators. Now beyond that, we have 47 wells and 32 booster pumps. So it's basically a total of 79 other places where it'd be nice to have generators. Right now we have 12 permanent generators at what has been determined over the years to be the most critical sites, and we have 6 that are portable. And so we do have the ability then to move those 6 portable generators around to where we think the most critical sites are. And right now they're located in upcountry to make sure that we can provide water upcountry. So we've stationed the ones that we have in the upcountry locations. We have also rented 3 additional generators. That's all we could find. By the way, these are generators that are the size of a semi-truck. And this is not like the generator you get at Home Depot these are the size of a semi-truck. They cost about $500,000 each. So these are big, expensive pieces of equipment. We also secured money in the budget to purchase another 7 generators. So, and we're now in the process of purchasing those. It takes a year to get the generator after you've purchased it, right? This is not something that's on the shelf. It takes a year from when you say, but first of all, you have to go through the county process. It's a bid process, the competitive process. You get the bids, you evaluate the bids, you choose the best bidder, and then from that point, it's still a year before you actually have delivery, typically on a generator. These are not just, again, easy to find. So, but we do have, we think enough funds for about 7 more that we would then be able to purchase and put those at the best locations. But even after all of that, there's still, if you've been keeping track, 51 locations where we would not have generators, even if we get all of those. So we're certainly looking at how can we get additional generators. We're putting them at the most critical locations. We're looking to get more generators in the future. We are looking for outside funding for a lot of things, including generators. So we're developing applications for funding from FEMA, from other federal agencies, from the EPA, that could help us fund some of these generators. To get 51 generators is $25 million. My entire budget's $80 million, and now that's for everything. So, it's a lot of money to get these generators. So the other thing you can do, which helps, is to have storage. And of course, we do have some storage, but again, the storage was designed for, the tanks were designed if you had a structure fire, not if you have a wildfire that takes out, many, many homes like it happened, of course. So we do have these pretty good sized reservoirs upcountry. There's 4 big reservoirs, but the water from those reservoirs goes through the treatment plant. So that is there's actually 4 upcountry and then a 5th one at Piolo. The water from those has to go through the treatment plants before it goes out into the system. So that's kind of the choke point. You can't go up faster than the treatment plant can treat them. Now, we have thought about, emergency, do you bypass the treatment plant and send untreated water into the system, which we can't right now do because of the plumbing, but we're looking at how to do that. But that's not something you would do without really thinking about it, because after you do that, it's an unsafe water advisory, it's going back through testing the system, flushing the system. There's a lot to go. So that would be a decision that would be, in a really dire emergency, you could potentially get the water from the reservoirs into the system and at least have the water to fight the fire, but there's going to be a lot to come after that. So that's kind of the situation on the generators. With respect to water supply, so I'll leave this up here for people to look at because I know it's kind of hard to see from there, but these are all the things that we're doing upcountry to develop new water supply. And I would say that not much has been done for the past quite a few years, and so it takes a while to develop major new source of water supply, but we're doing, I think, everything we can think of. If any of you have ideas for more water supply, well, I'm open to hear it. The first thing to say is, so here's upcountry, and this box here is the area of a consent decree that the county entered into in 2003. The county cannot develop wells in this area until we satisfy the requirements of the consent decree, and this is basically the Haiku area. So we cannot develop wells in the Haiku area, and it's going to be years before we can get all the work done that's the consent decree requires. So that's going to be a while. This box here is the area that's now the jurisdiction of the East Maui Water Authority, and so in terms of surface water, that's kind of their now responsibility to work on that. So what can we do as a Department of Water Supply? These 2 red triangles here are, what are they? Quadrilaterals? Something, I don't know. They're four-sided figures. That's 2 areas that we are looking at that's in our budget to look at for new wells for upcountry. And so as the county, we need to go through a process to determine where we would drill the wells, determine where those wells would be. We're looking at potentially 2 wells in each of those red boxes. And then the county would then, after we evaluate it, determine that they're good locations, we would have to go through an environmental assessment, which takes on the order of a year. And then we have to, I'll take your questions after, and then we would proceed to develop the well. We're also looking beyond that at some private wells. So there's a number of private wells in the area that have come to us and said, maybe, would you be interested in connecting our well to your system, or even buying our well? One of them is Kula 1800. Some of you may know about that one. Another one is the Kalialunui. I hope I said that right. That's a well that's they've offered to us. There's a DLNR well that is still almost finished that we could look at. There's a Maui land and pine well that's in the area, and we've been talking to them about potentially getting their well connected to our system. I guess, so we are looking at MLP. They have a well up country that we're looking at getting. Now, in any of these wells that we're looking at, the question then becomes, how productive do we think the well is going to be? And then what would it take to connect it to the county infrastructure, to the county system? And what portions of the county infrastructure could then be served by that well? And we think some of them have some good possibilities. So we're kind of doing the evaluation for all those private wells. The other thing we're doing is looking at connecting, and this is a bit controversial, connecting the upcountry system to the central system so that we could pump water from the central system upcountry. There's more water available in the central system than there is upcountry right now. And so And last October, when we had the shortage, I would have really enjoyed being able to, pump up a couple of hundred, 2 or 3 MGD from the central system upcountry that was available, but there's no pipe connecting the two. Us water utility folks like to have all our systems connected. So we're looking at that as well. And I think that's everything on here. Yeah, so essentially we're looking at all the possibilities that we can look at for getting new source. That's the good news. The bad news is they're all going to take a while. It takes a while to develop a well. It's going to take a while to build a pipeline. The quickest ones are going to be potentially some of these private wells, but it's still going to be a project to get them connected to the county system. So that's everything I had to say. Yeah.
Thanks, Director. We'll get into some of the questions. I think, thankfully, a lot of the questions that you had were answered, but we'll kind of revisit some of those. If you do have a piece of paper that you filled out, you can kind of just raise your hand, get our attention, and some of the staff will come around and collect that from you as well, and we can add that to the list and see how far we get here before we got plenty of time before 8 o'clock. But we'll kind of start with some of the water questions, Director, and appreciate you mentioning the generator questions. I think a lot of folks had questions regarding the generator, but if you could maybe just kind of reiterate some of the, how that kind of process works with once the power goes off, or, with the HECO shutoff program that has been a point of concern as well. How do the generators kick in? How does that process sort of work from your end?
Right. So, ideally you have someone who can be there to help trigger the changeover, but we are implementing technologies that would allow an automatic switchover. So if the power goes off, the generator automatically comes on. And so we're in the process of getting that set up in all the locations that we can. So it would just be a matter of a switch that goes, makes that happen.
Thanks. And what is the status of the ag line, I believe it is, utilized for fire suppression?
Right, so we're looking at that. There was the state, this is not the county, the state designed and then constructed a portion of an ag line that's uphill from Upper Kula. And so we are looking at that to see what potential benefits there could be from using that line. My understanding, it was designed, contemplated for non-potable water, and it would have bypassed the treatment plant. It is the same source of water that would feed that line that feeds the treatment plant. So it doesn't create more source, but it could provide some additional infrastructure benefits to the county, and we're looking at that. So now I have to talk about my favorite subject, which is that we're developing a hydraulic model. Some of you probably heard me say this before. We're developing a hydraulic model of our water system so we can understand how it operates. That should be done in a month or two. It's very close. And when we have the hydraulic model, we can then say, well, how could this pipe potentially benefit the system in terms of what location, what it could serve, and so on. So excited about that. But we're evaluating how the ag line could be used potentially even as part of the potable system.
Awesome, thank you. And in regards to fire hydrants, this might be for maybe water as well as Chief Ventura, but the pumping to ensure our fire hydrants, we've gotten some questions to our office as well regarding just the capacity in terms of pure water supply and functionability, in terms of whether with regards to electricity, whether regards to handling some of the fires that we've seen.
Sure. So when the system's operating as it should be, including the generators kick in, you should have enough water at the fire hydrants to fight the fire, unless there's so much leaking out of the system that you're losing pressure, which is certainly what happened in Lahaina. Again, the hydraulic model will help us identify any locations where there seems to be a lack of potential pressure or flow during a fire event, and that's where we would focus our capital improvement program to upsize the pipes, potentially put in additional storage or pumpage to make sure that all those areas are covered. So, yeah.
Chief, if you want to address any of with regards to fire hydrants.
I'll just kind of add to that where the fire code comes into play, because we all live near standpipes and everybody wants hydrants, and we understand that. So when neighborhoods were developed years and years and years ago, they met the fire code. Back then, fire code was a standpipe. through time and research and studies, we've identified that more water is needed based on square footage of structure, density of lots. That's where second dwelling, third dwelling, fourth dwelling really affects us. And that's why we will enforce the most current fire code that's approved by the county council to make sure that we have adequate water where there's all new development. So if you're in a rural area and a neighborhood's going to be subdivided or a lot's going to be subdivided, that's when you might see water improvements. Or if you see a new neighborhood, that's where you might see hydrants put in versus standpipes. And for us, we always want more water, but we understand there's a large cost to go back and retrofit things. So they have to prioritize in one way or another how that's done.
Next question for Chief Ventura again. Do we have an understanding of what started all these fires? And also included in the question is just a request for timely public notification of cause and some of the reports.
Yeah, so every fire is different, from a single bedroom fire to a 500-acre fire. And cause and origin, it can be very complicated when there is very little to no evidence. And so a lot of our fires, especially in the wildland arena, are undetermined because nobody was there to witness it. There's no source of power. There's no cameras. There's nothing that tells us what happened when the fire started. Most recently, though, it appears that the evidence that we're reviewing for the Kula Crater Road fire was an accidental fire caused by electrical ignition. So those are things that it just takes time for us to get all the evidence. And then, there's a lot of push right now for the Lahaina fire, as well as the other fires up here that happened in Kula last year. And we're working with ATF. As soon as they give us their report, then we'll be able to add it to our report as a supplement, as an appendix in the back. But we don't have it yet, and they're finishing it up, hopefully soon, so that we can put that out to the public. We're definitely not withholding anything. It's just a matter of making sure we have a good, thorough report to provide to the public when we finally do that.
Thanks, Chief. Next few questions for Mima. In the event of another serious wildfire, are the evacuation centers on call to open immediately so people know where to go? We saw a little bit of that yesterday, I think. In terms of the evacuation centers, what's the process and how quickly are they on call immediately?
So I believe what the kind of general time frame is, if Red Cross is called to set up a shelter, they'll take 2 hours. They usually come a lot faster. In the Pi'ihana fire, I think they were mobilized to set up a temporary evacuation point. I think they were on scene at the Pukalani Park within 40 minutes, I believe. There's different shelters. We're working on a sheltering plan. The primary shelter that we were wanting to use was Hannibal Tavares. Hannibal Tavares was used on that night. We looked to Eddie Tam. That's one of the primary areas that we go to. We're thinking about the Kula community and them being able to evacuate or move to that particular location. And I guess the space that Eddie Tam provided wasn't sufficient enough to accommodate 5,500 structures, a worst case scenario. So we moved the evacuation shelter to Keikaulike High School. So I guess what I want to say regarding the sheltering, it is also dynamic. There are locations that we use that become primary locations. Obviously, if those locations are being used and it doesn't match the capacity of the incident, then we're going to look for areas that would. I think one of the things that might be a little different is that we're going to set up temporary evacuation points or TEPs where we're going to, if we're evacuating, we want to send you to a TEP for information. And they'll be able to give information. They're locked into our information in the EOC. You can go to a TEP which would be stood up by American Red Cross, and they'll be able to provide you information there at the TEP. they'd be able to make contact with you, and if it transitions to a shelter, then it would transition to a shelter, and you would be given that information to help that transition happen effectively.
Thank you. Is the CERT program still in effect, and can they help MEMA during the initial phase of evacuations?
So the CERT program is in effect. We have a train the trainer that's happening in August. What that means is, so our primary trainers have been the fire department, and the fire department is busy. And so what we've done is we've supplemented the fire department's training or their opportunity to train us, and we're offering a train-the-trainer course. So all the people on the roster, they're invited to take a train-the-trainer course, which allows those trainers to train the community. The idea with the CERT program is, in fact, whether this is impossible to meet or not, the perspective is 100% CERT trained. We want to be able to provide the community the CERT training. Anybody that wants CERT training, whether it's in the response or not, we want to be able to offer you the training. And so we're slowly going to build out, like I said, with this train-the-trainer piece, probably have maybe 2 to 3 train-the-trainers a year, along with just expanding the roster. We want to be able to engage the community and provide that kind of training to the community. There's this kind of vision of organizing communities into, I'm going to say, ahupua and into moku, or into associations and to districts. But the idea is to kind of partner with all the communities, get you guys trained, give you guys information on CERT. So people across, agencies across the country have used CERT in different ways. I believe Chief Pelletieri has experience with using the CERT program to support traffic control. What we used CERT for in the Lahaina fire, I was a volunteer, and CERT came and supported the pods, the points of distribution. What would be great, and what we are trying to morph our CERT program into, is to provide incident command training to our CERT people. So not just the CERT piece, but for us to effectively organize and mobilize the community, we want our one of the CERT kind of teams would fill a higher level function, if you will, to help us organize all the communities in a total response, which means that we would train them at ICS, Incident Command System, and we would hopefully be able to support the organization of the CERT programs, the CERT roster within the community that aligns with the EOC.
Thank you. Next question, can MEMA send out advisories every 4 hours when the fire is not contained? And I guess maybe a good chance as well to kind of explain, what the timeline is, what factors into how the frequency of those alerts and things like that. So MEMA alerts are used for weather events advisories and activation information. So that's what we use MEMA alerts for. So I guess that also means that once we are downgraded in activation or not activation, the information that you would get is going to be from county comms communications in a press release. So as it downgrades, then the MEMA alerts are going to stop because we're going to use that for more emergency information and or weather threats that come in. And we're going to use press releases with county comms to communicate the updates on the progress. What I also want to say is if and Chief could probably add to this too, if the fires are smaller or the police events are smaller, then the departments will use their own social media sites and their own means of communication. So if it's smaller in nature, that's where you get your information. Once EOC is activated and we include county comms, then you'll see MEMA alerts, and then you'll see press releases and PSAs that come out. Thanks. This one might be for fire as well as maybe MEMA, but the question states, I understand that Oprah has a flame retardant plane. Can we use it? And maybe a good opportunity as well to talk about how the county interfaces with private entities and utilizing equipment and things like that for emergency response. Is that a plane? I believe so, yeah. I'm not aware, but I know we utilize, whether it's Goodfellow or other.
We have a
Okay.
I just learned, and I'm not sure if it's accurate, that Oahu has got a flame retardant type plane that like California has. That's correct. Can we use it also in some of these big fires?
Gotcha. One second. I'm just going to repeat the question so everybody heard that. So it's Oahu, not Oprah. I apologize. I misread that. So I got excited. I thought we were getting some,
Oprah can afford it.
Yeah, well, I figured we'd ask. But the question is basically, the gentleman's understanding is that Oahu has received a firefighting plane, basically, a plane that fire retardant and things like that. And is it available? Is that accurate? Do we have any sort of resources like that, Chief?
Not to our knowledge. However, the State Fire Council is represented by the 4 county fire chiefs, the state fire chief, and DOFA. And we did make a pitch to the governor after August 8th to create a statewide aircraft program. The challenge with fixed wing firefighting is there's a lot. Let's just summarize a few of them. The time it takes you to go refill, the facilities you need to refill, and the duration between drops. So if you look at like Southern California, they're fighting almost everything with helicopters with an occasional airplane drop. It's a great tool. If we had one, we would use it. We recommended one for the state. It's a huge investment because of hangar maintenance, facilities, aircraft, pilots, 24 hours, and it's just not one plane, it's multiple planes, it's parts on the shelf. You have to have the system in the facility to fill the airplane with the retardant in the water. So do you build that at every airport, or do you pick and choose one per county? All that has to be a part of the investment. So although we support it, it does need to be driven by the state to do something like that, and we definitely would encourage something like that in the future if we could afford it.
Thanks, Chief. And if I get this question wrong, make sure you correct me. But I believe it's, has there been a consensus? Is that where we're at on when sirens are sounded? And that was the gist of the question. Is it consensus on when sirens are sounded? Yeah, so just to repeat, basically, has there been a consensus? Is there a protocol as to when sirens are sounded?
Well, the short answer is we would use the public siren system anytime we needed to. Once again, it is in partnership with the other tools. And if something is down, and the siren system supports the best messaging, that's what we would do. So it's not limited to a threat. If that's your question, it will be used for wildfires. It'll be used for everything that we need to notify the public. Now, the siren system is a sound. It notifies you via sound to go seek more information, and that's what the siren system represents. And any time that sound needs to come out because other tools aren't going to work for whatever reason, then we're going to use the siren system, and you're going to go seek information when you hear the sound of the siren. And so once again, it's not limited to any threat for us. We try and look at all of the situation collectively, and we make those determinations, but there's no limit for us using the public siren system.
Thanks. Next question, when the EOC is activated for a fire, who is usually in the EOC responding to that?
So once again, so all of the EOC staff, all of the partners that would be a part of the solution to the particular problem. And so those solutions are different from fire to fire, as Chief said. So if there's a critical infrastructural challenge or problem that we need to solve, then all the critical infrastructural people will be in the EOC. If there's a human services problem where people will be out of a home or out of their area for a long time and they need shelter and food and water, and it becomes a human services issue, then all the people within the human services branch will also be in the EOC. On the Crater Road fire, the primary function of that particular fire was emergency services. So fire police, national parks, National Guard, those are the primary resources that were in the EOC once the concern of evacuation had become a potential. Then the human services people were called. HECO was called early as well as some of the other critical infrastructure persons were on a phone call. What we are trying to do with the EOC is we want to ensure that people that belong in the EOC are in the EOC and nobody else. We don't want to overwhelm the space. The space is small. We want our operators to be thinking clearly without any kinds of distractions, so we limit people to come to the EOC. Only people that are part of the solution will be invited. And so that situation changes depending on the impact of the incident.
Next question, is MEMA fully staffed at this point?
So the organizational structure or staffing on June 30th was 9. We were approved 22 positions in 2025, funded for 16, I believe, and so we do not have 22. I believe we have 8. One person is on military leave. I think we have 7 with one person on military leave, but we are looking to fill the additional 13 positions moving forward for sure.
And one more question here. Can MEMA utilize Homeland Security grant money to help DWS with generators acquisition?
Absolutely. So I just saw we're looking at the hazard mitigation program and the projects that are on hazard mitigation that I had to rank today. And I saw a lot of the water infrastructure or the water projects that I absolutely support. Of course I did, John. Of course I did. So Homeland Security grants, I did not see anything about generators on Homeland Security, but definitely on hazard mitigation.
Thanks. Next one for fire. Where did you get the water to fight the Crater Road fire, and did you have enough water? Were there any issues with supply?
So we pulled most of the water right out of Crater Road at the bottom of the highway. And then we also, the military aircraft could not utilize any water supply in the area, so they had to fly to Kakapau and occasionally to the ocean to get water because their baskets are just way too big for small water supplies. But we were able to pull everything from the Crater Road and the Kula Lodge area at the top of Kekalike Highway.
Thanks, Chief. And for Director Stuffelbein, may have touched on this a little bit earlier, but how much would it cost to connect the central and upcountry systems, and how long would that take, and would you be able to utilize bonds to do this?
So that's in progress. It's going to be 10 to 20 million, somewhere in there, and yes, we're looking for outside funding, and it would take 2 to 3 years at the minimum. Thanks,
Director. Would you be able to utilize bonds to fund that?
Sure. Yeah, we could use revenue bonds for any of our capital projects. Yes.
Next question: when will the local weather monitors be installed? Maybe the weather stations on Haleakala. Will there be public access? To the data, and will that be made available in real time?
So we're working with a variety of partners for weather stations, one being the state, another one being HECO, to improve the weather reporting in all of our microclimates. Because as we know, we just talked about it, you can have 40-mile-an-hour winds right up on the hill, a couple of S-turns down, you have 0-mile-an-hour winds. So we're trying to really create more weather stations in Maui County. What that's going to do is that'll allow the National Weather Service to get a better idea of what the weather is in that spot so that they can make better decisions on red flag warning parameters based on specific weather stations. Prior to August 8th, I believe we had one, Kahului Airport. So we're working to get more of those up. Meso West is one website, and then the HECO website will be open to the public for viewing their cameras as well as the weather stations.
Thanks, Chief. For MEMA, are you looking at having a radio station that could be used in an emergency? Maybe a dedicated radio station, or if you want to maybe revisit how you folks utilize the radio system.
So let me back up and start with this. So 3 of the positions that we have approved is a public affairs officer, a public information officer, and a community outreach person. And so those 3 people in that section will be addressing all of MEMA's public education, public information strategies to provide information to the public. The radio station is a tremendous tool, and we haven't, personally, I know that it's an important tool to use. I just haven't been able to take full advantage of the radio or the media outlets to support, the messaging and the education that you deserve. And so that is forthcoming once we get those positions staffed.
Also, we're lucky to have Zeke Kula here from the mayor's office, who luckily can answer some of these questions.
How's it going? I just wanted to add a little bit to the radio question that was just asked. So I used to do radio. So if we're talking about ham radio, that's different than the public airwave system that we have. So majority of the public radio stations, KPOA 93.5, Native 92.5, Q103, 103.7, they only have live broadcasts at specific parts of the day. So if we're trying to put out some kind of messaging so the morning shows on average, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. are live broadcasts. Then they do what's called tracking, which is normally from 10 a.m. all the way to 6 p.m. And on weekends, there's no live broadcasts at all. Everything is tracked. So a lot of the radio question is based on whether or not they have the capacity to call a radio DJ, have them come down and unlock the station, and physically get on the airwaves to push that messaging. So it's not an impossible criteria to work on, but because a lot of the stations that are tracking are streaming media from outside of the state of Hawaii, if you would, it would physically take somebody to go down to a station, unlock the thing, flip that switch off, and then energize their FM signal. So it's a good option when the radio station has a physical presence in the studio, and unfortunately at times it's only 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. So just wanted to give that as kind of a food for thought idea.
Thanks, Zeke. This question for Chief Ventura, but how are we able to get landowners, people to clear their property of fire, fuels, and overgrowth?
Yeah, good question. So we're working on several things regarding that topic. The clarity of the fire code is the first thing we're working on, and we're working on our fire code amendments right now. Just to let you know, what the fire code states is that 30 feet from the nearest structure, your fuel needs to be cut to 18 inches or shorter. 30 feet's not very far. The camera is about 30 feet from me. So when you're looking at your vacant landowner, is it further than 30 feet from a structure, not a property boundary? And so that's what we're able to enforce We are working on a few things, though. We're working on our Firewise program, which is where we can come out to your community, work with the neighborhood, introduce you to the neighbors. You know, we want people to have face-to-face so that they can understand the impacts that if I own 500 acres and I live next to you folks, what is my property, how does my property impact you? And so we can recommend how fuel breaks will work and how they'll keep people safer. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna increase that fire code to go all the way up to 100 feet, depending on the size of the vegetation. So if the vegetation is high, it can shoot a larger flame front, will require the greater fuel break, like 100 feet. And if it's shorter fuel, and we have all that we're trying to write into our fire code so it's very understandable to each person. Because when you look at law, it's open to interpretation. And so we're trying to take that interpretation out of the law so that it's crystal clear so everybody knows what the rules are we're supposed to be following. Then the other thing we're working with is large landowners. We've had several meetings with large landowners who talk to them about being good neighbors and doing fuel breaks around their property. A lot of them are compliant. Then what our plan is to do is to put all this on a map, which we're working on building right now, and then we'll be revisiting this every April with our inspectors to make sure they go out, talk to these large landowners and tell them it's becoming dry, the rains are going away, we're getting into fire season, we'd like you to go ahead and manage your fuel break and maintain it throughout the fire season. So we've had good feedback from the community, from the landowners on that. They're showing active participation. Another place that I've been recently is to a conference up in the mainland where historically it was just firefighters, but a lot of our landowners actually showed up. And so that's good. They're showing to be proactive. They want to be good stewards of our community. And so historically, we would not have seen these people at these conferences, and they were there. So that's a good sign as well.
Thanks, Chief. A couple related questions here, mainly to do with evacuation, but one dealing with, is there a road to get out of Lower Pukalani if the fire is blocking the area near Foodland, just out here, and blocking the other exits? And then a more general question is, well, how do we evacuate upcountry other than through Haleakala and Kula highways? Pointed out exacerbated evacuation from areas that sort of funnel into, the area near Kinkikalike from Kulumalu. Some of those examples, are there other ways to evacuate folks from the upcountry area? And then I had a question specifically about Lower Pukalani as well.
Certainly. So I have your email about Lower Pukalani. So at the bottom of Iolani Road, there's a guardrail. Behind that guardrail is 50 acres owned by a Pukalani Association. So we would need to get some sort of agreement with Pukalani Association to allow a right of entry for people to evacuate on their property. Easier said than done, I'll tell you that right now. But it makes sense. For us, it makes sense. We're always gonna, want more ways out, because not only are evacuation routes useful if you need to evacuate a neighborhood, but they're also useful for us to fight fire off of. So we support this type of action. This is the bottom of Iolani Road, and it'd be something that Public Works would have to, because it's their guardrail, their roadway, they would have to put in an agreement with Pukalani Association to get authority to open up a gate and let people out the bottom of Pukalani. When we build new neighborhoods, like this great neighborhood up here above Pukalani Superette, you'll notice there's one way in with a gate, and then there's a backup exit in the neighborhood. That's the new fire code. That's what you see between old neighborhoods and new neighborhoods. So if there's new neighborhoods in the community, you're going to see multiple ways out of the neighborhood. We're also very challenged by geography. Everybody builds a neighborhood into a ravine, look at Honolulu, they all go right up the gulches into these one way in, one way out neighborhoods. Or they build them, like in my neighborhood, there's one way in and everybody's on the ridge, houses on each side. So that's how historically things were built. When we look at subdivisions as the fire department moving forward, we're looking at having two ways out of every neighborhood. If you're in an older neighborhood, you got to work with your land owners around you to come up with a secondary egress. It's a smart thing to do, and I think if you have a good relationship with people next to you, you'll be able to work it out so you can get a second way out of your neighborhood.
So just to add on to that, so once again, the technology that we're looking at allows us to model communities, It allows us to look at all the roads and really use scientific data to, in fact, tell us how long it'll take a community to move out of a particular place and really be able to identify the true threat within a community. It also will identify the gap or the deficiency in evacuation routes, which would allow us to prioritize extensions of roads, connections, and or additions if necessary. I think what I also want to be able to tell you is that there's also sheltering in place. Sheltering in place is a critical thing that works. Surround yourself with a golf course and sprinklered systems, you're fine. You don't need to always leave the area. If the fuels aren't in close proximity to houses that will burn, you are fine. Once again, there is a scenario that comes to my mind. When I was a firefighter, they were trying to evacuate Lanai. And so there was this huge effort to bring boats over from Lahaina to evacuate Lanai. And when I went over on the island, I said, hey, take me to the hotel. And we went to the hotel. Why do you want to go to the hotel? I want to go to the hotel because I want to know why you're evacuating the island. So we went to the hotel. The building is concrete. It's surrounded by golf courses and sprinkler systems. I said, this is not going to burn. Get everybody back into the hotel and cancel the boats. And we moved everybody back to the hotel and canceled the boats. So somebody was also saying, how is Kaanapali going to evacuate? We want people to go to Kaanapali if there's a fire, because there's construction. There's type 1 construction with golf courses surrounding. That's the safest place you can go, right? So there's sheltering in place areas that don't require evacuation. Now, of course, there's education that comes with that and notification and messaging that comes with that. But those sheltering in place areas, those refuge areas are in fact really good solutions for you where not everybody needs to be on the road.
Thank you. Next question for Director Stufflebean. What's the cost to pump water upcountry, the average daily cost, and then during drought times?
Oh, the cost, well, that depends on how you look, how much you include in the cost. I mean, there's the cost of the actual pumping, and then there's overhead and all that other stuff. So it's on the order of $10 per thousand to pump it up the hill, and then you add on overhead and everything else. So it's expensive pumping it up the hill. And so, one thing that we have changed is that in past years, they didn't pump very much up the hill, and they used water from the upper reservoirs, and then when the dry season hit, there was no water there. We're trying as much as possible to keep water in the reservoirs, which means pumping more water up the hill, which means it costs more, but my job isn't to save money, my job is to provide water. So we're pumping more, keeping the reservoirs as full as possible, but it's expensive.
Thanks, Director. Next question, I believe for fire, maybe you can best answer this, but I'd imagine this would be something for some of our other departments as well. But in terms of our houseless communities in fire-prone areas, what's sort of the county's purview in terms of working with those individuals and those type of residents in terms of fire risk?
Yeah, great question. So one of the areas that we've been concentrating and working on with multiple departments is that Old Maui High School, Honolulu Road, and police, public works, mayor's office, housing and human concerns, fire, council members, MEMA have all been involved in trying to provide solutions to the situation there. We can't force people out of an area that they're allowed to be in. There are laws, and so when it comes to housing and human concerns, they have certain things that they have to follow. For us, we work on, meeting with them. The mayor's office has a homeless outreach. They've been up there numerous times to try to help people. If you know of a different area where people are squatting, what we really need is we need the landowner to make a complaint of trespassing. We can't just go on and kick people out. We've had a lot of areas that are in fire code violation, and we've tried to clear the land, but there's people on it. We have to work around and with those people to actually clear the land and get the vegetation management under control. And we can't just go over there and kick them off. It's the landowner that has to make the action. So there's a lot of private property throughout this island, throughout this county, where there are people on this land, and they may be, to the eye of the public, they may be creating a hazard to the nearby neighborhoods. But again, it has to be driven by the owner of the property, and we deal with this a lot in Kihei, in Kahului. Same situation comes up. But I can tell you this, that all departments have a hand in trying to make all these situations as best as we can.
Thanks, Chief. One more question here is maybe for everybody involved, but has MEMA, fire, police, comms, and water been in communication or discussing with the mayor and council to secure bond funding to pay for fire response upgrades? And for example, Director Stufflebean recommends more generators, Fire Chief recommends updated water systems and structures to provide adequate water, and MEMA Director looking for tech updates, and budgetary restraints obviously come into play. So the general question was basically, have those discussions been taking place to secure bond funding for upgrades?
Yeah, I'll start. On the water side, yes. So we're looking even better. We're looking for grants and loans. It's even better than bonds. And so we used the fire as an opportunity to really look at all of our needs countywide, and we came up with about 140 projects costing about $1 billion when you add them all up. Now that's not going to happen in 1 year. That's a 10-year or maybe longer. And then we looked at, well, what are all the potential funding sources out there? And we actually hired a consultant to help us with this, and they've identified over 40 different federal funding sources. So then we're matching up all the different needs that we have with the funding source. Like for some of them, for example, will require that it's a low-income area. Well, then that might be a funding source for parts of Maui that qualify for that. Others are for agriculture. Others are for different reasons. So we're matching all those up. Some of them, like any type of reuse or recycling, they favor those kind of projects. So we're matching those up, and then we're preparing to go after them as aggressively as we can. And we think there's a real good chance that we can get a lot of federal funding. And so, so that's the best thing, is to get federal funding. There's also a state revolving fund for water and wastewater projects that offers bonds at a really low interest rate and way below market rates. And so those are good. And they often forgive the principal, which is even better. We already have got some of those, and we're certainly looking to be very aggressive in going after those in the future.
Thanks, John. So let's just go back one step before we talk about funding. So the Department of Fire and Public Safety hasn't opened a station since 2003 when Wailea opened. So we know we're in need. We also know we just cost to the community. Like, we don't make money, we don't charge fees and rates when we come to your house. So we are an expense to the community. A fire station on every corner of the community is safer for you, it's safer for our firefighters, it's safer for everybody, but we understand that there's a balance to fund all of this. So along with the general fund, the bond funding is basically a loan to the county that we pay over time, and that's an option as well, but the county's on the hook for that money as well. So we've done the same thing that the water department has done, and we've seen several different funding sources. I don't like to get too far ahead of us. We have a lot of promised money on the horizon right now. Some of it's already kind of public, and if you go digging in the legislation and in the national Senate and Congress, you'll see some of it already. But Senator Schatz and Senator Hirono put $15.1 million towards Haiku Fire Station. So those are sort of things. Now we're just waiting for the appropriations bill to come out of Congress at the end of the year. But like I said, it's happening. It's moving in the right direction, but it's not signed by everybody yet. Those are the types of things. And then we're also working, and then just to understand, Haiku Fire Station benefits everybody. People think that fire station in your community only benefits you. But the last year's August 8th fires, Haiku would have been up here. If even this Crater Road fire, we'd be able to move Haiku maybe towards Paia. We move Paia up on this hill and help with this fire. So a fire station doesn't just serve the community that it's in, it serves all communities. So we want to recognize that. And then private donations, we've looked for a variety of things. So you've seen stuff on the news. West Maui Improvement Foundation is pushing for this Oluwalu Fire Station. We've gotten some pretty healthy funding. $250,000 of donations for that. We're working with another donor for the actual fire truck for the station. So a lot of things are in motion, which is a good thing. They also take a lot of time. It takes us 4 years now to get a fire truck. It takes obviously a very long time to build a fire station. We've owned Haiku property since 2006. So any of you who can support the project to make sure we kind of push it along and support all of our communities is greatly appreciated. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. The last few questions we had were mainly some public works related questions, some very key areas, obviously, some folks with some of the Pukalani Road construction, Kekalike Avenue, Highway, excuse me, and some of the washout there. If those were your questions, feel free to come see us. We've requested, our office has requested from our partners at the state some updates on Kekalike. I believe we just got a response on some of the road construction in Pukalani as well. And I was remiss earlier, I apologize. We've also been joined by South Maui Councilmember Tom Cook. And the reason I bring him up, he's the chair of the Water and Infrastructure Committee. So I know he'll be happy to talk story about some of the roads and some of those water questions after we get done here. But that about concludes it. Again, thank you to our resources. We'll bring Councilmember Sugimura up again as we wrap it up. Well, I thank you folks for being awesome tonight and some really, really informative questions and the responses as well from these guys who haven't gotten a lot of sleep in the last, I don't know how long. I don't know how they keep track of the days. So thank you all. Here's you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jordan. And I want to thank my staff who are back there, as well as the OCS, our Deputy Director of Department of our Office of Council Services, and Marlene, who lives up country, that's helping us with this meeting tonight. And Akaku, thank you very much. You're always present, and I believe that this will be aired. Is it live, or is it in the future? Both. And thank you very much, Zeke. Again, your resources are appreciated. Everybody come and look at the map that directs their stuff being created. I see Kula Watershed Alliance. I hope your questions got answered. You're a big part of Upcountry. Oh, we skipped your question, Jordan. While he's getting that, I want to say that this gentleman here noticed that across Pukalani Superette, that big empty lot across the street, the owners cut back all of the debris there. I don't know what you call it, but there were thistles that were growing and it was blowing all the way in the community. So we want to thank, I think it was really Megan Nakashima who pushed those owners across the street to make sure that the burn and the fuel was cut back. They cut back the whole field, right? Not only the, yeah. Okay. So while we're waiting, Tom, oh, here comes Jordan.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a water generator related question. And it's probably easier if I just let Sarah ask it. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. I appreciate it. So I was very, very curious, just doing the math. Thank you, Director Stufflebean, for being here. I know you waited through a whole thing before you could speak. You said 47 wells and 32 pumps, and that was for the county or for the island?
For the county.
That's the whole county, okay. So then you said there are 12 permanent generators. Is that for the county or for the island?
Everything is for the county.
County, okay. So then there are 6, so of those pumps, how many are serving our upcountry communities?
Upcountry is served by 5 wells and 11 pumps.
Okay. And you said there are 6 portable generators and they're currently located upcountry. Are they in place at pumps, wells, or both? Or are they not in place, they're just there?
Right. So I prefer not to divulge the location of all of
You don't have
our-
to tell me
Okay,
where.
right,
Just
right.
we're talking numbers.
So, all right, so they are at the pump stations that would be needed to get water upcountry if we lost power.
Okay. Great. And they are like functional, like
they're all
just
functional.
got to do the little switch.
They're all functional.
Okay. And so do you feel, what is your comfort level, I would say, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most prepared? If we were to have, let's say, the PSPS program activates for Upper Kula, the power is shut off. What's your comfort level of our ability to access water to fight a fire?
Yeah, most likely it would be at 8 or 9. Yeah, we're in good shape.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Director.
Okay, so this is the end of the meeting. Tom, you've been sitting here patiently. You want to say hello?
Hello, everybody. I want to commend your representative here, who I think everybody would agree takes the prize for bringing her community together and keeping them informed. I also want to acknowledge all the people that took the time to come here this evening and to participate. The meetings that we had previously about the deep well, where all of the many people who are on the water meter list and are concerned, and we're hoping that everybody stays involved. I think that the water director has demonstrated that the Department of Water Supply is doing everything within their power. The council is funding to the greatest of ability to do it. When you look at the map and the restrictions that are in place as far as where wells can be drilled and where water can be negotiated for, is part of the issue. So I'm looking forward to the next couple of years being able to significantly increase our source, and I think we have the man at the job here.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So, Jordan, you want to close up? We're done? Okay, we are done. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Appreciate you.